that being steadfast on a good deed is also sabr, right? Then you are not, then you do not expect that reward, right? And this is why part of knowledge, part of beneficial knowledge for a Muslim is to know what reward to expect from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for what we do. That is the knowledge of fada'il. And that is beneficial because then you have ihtisaban. You have the ihtisab. So part of good intention is to intend to do something, to do something intentionally, to intend to do something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and intend to do something for the reward. Right? So the famous ahadith, for example, man sama Ramadana imanan, man qama Ramadana imanan wa ihtisaban. Whoever fasts Ramadan with iman and ihtisaban, with the intention of reward, as if they're counting the reward, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives all of their past sins. So therefore, all of the three facets of sabr are important, because then whenever you feel that a good deed is slipping away, right? You remember the reward of patience. That patience is part of iman. Patience is absolutely one of the fundamental qualities of a believer, like the head to the body. Once you lose your patience, once that slips away, you lose your patience. The head is gone, and therefore the body is gone. Patience is one of those things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards without limit. So some rewards are when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises a reward that is quantified. That is quantified. مثل الذين ينفقون أموالهم في سبيل الله كمثل حبة أنبتت سبع سنابل في كل سنبلة مئة حبة. So the example of those who spend in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is like a grain, right? أنبتت سبع سنابل, which grows 7 ears. في كل سنبلة مئة حبة. In every single ear are 100 grains, right? So one is equal to 700. One is equal to 700. So this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is promising a reward that is quantified. Okay? من جاء بالحسنة فله عشر أمثالها. Whoever brings one good deed, he will get 10 times its like. This is quantified reward. But with patience, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا يُوَفَّى الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرَهُمْ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. إِنَّمَا يُوَفَّى الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرَهُمْ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards the patient people without any counting, without any number, without any reckoning. So this is why sabr is an important deed to have ihtisab with, because the virtue is so great. Right? Anyway, so and hence it's important. Forgiveness and forbearance, or forgiveness and overlooking, right? People who have offended is the highest position. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَمَنِ انْتَصَرَ بَعْدَ ظُلْمِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَا عَلَيْهِمْ مِنْ سَبِيلٍ. Right? Anybody who avenges himself after being oppressed, there is no blame against them. Anyone who avenges themselves, وَلَمَنِ انْتَصَرَ بَعْدَ ظُلْمِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَا عَلَيْهِمْ مِنْ سَبِيلٍ. Anybody who avenges themselves after being oppressed, there is no blame against them. إِنَّمَا السَّبِيلُ عَلَى الَّذِينَ يَظْلِمُونَ النَّاسَ وَيَبْغُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ. Blame goes against those who cause the oppression, right? And they seek corruption on the earth. They seek corruption on the earth. For them there is a punishment. And then وَلَمَنْ صَبَرَ وَغَفَرَ إِنَّ ذَلِكَ لَمِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. However, although vengeance may be their right, those who are patient and those who forgive, that is from the matters of high resolve. So he refers to that. He mentions that phrase, Azmul Umur, that it's a matter of high resolve. It comes from those verses. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the right to vengeance and then says, however, if you want an amazing reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a reward that is described as that is described using the kind of phrase with which Allah describes the greatest of prophets, ulul azmi min ar-rusul, right? The messengers of high resolve. Allah uses that kind of phrasing and says that if you can be patient and if you can forgive, فَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ مِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ, then that is better. So that is so forgiveness. The idea of forgiveness is is something that, I don't know. We tend to be, Muslims generally tend to give a very vengeful kind of image of themselves. Am I right? Huh? Nowadays we're like,
In the press. In the press.
fair enough.
I think it's in contrast.
At least that's how we're portrayed in the press.
I think it's in contrast to Christians because there's always they always have kind of the cheek kind of
Yeah.
perception, whereas us we don't subscribe to that completely.
Yeah, but why not? That's the more virtuous thing to do, isn't it? Yeah. I think that so the difference is between right and virtue. Right and virtue. Okay? So for example, how do you understand that? So uh, you know you make the protection of guardianship or something like guardianship, right? A daughter and the has the right to guardianship from of her father, right? Or there are duties. Actually, husband and wife examples are better. Right? So there are duties, there are rights that a husband has of the wife. Okay, the assumption, and often they are portrayed in such a way that these rights are obligations. These rights are obligations, right? And therefore, often people end up missing the fact that sometimes foregoing one's right, is generosity. Foregoing one's right is generosity, and always claiming your right is to lack generosity. Does that make sense? Not every right is there to be claimed. That's the point. Not every right is not. When you have a right to something, that right is not a duty. It's not an obligation. Okay, the two things shouldn't be confused. Rights are there to be given, but they're not always to be claimed. Right? It is more virtuous. In some situations, it's more virtuous to willingly. You have a choice. I can take my right, or I can forego it and take a higher path. A right is not a duty. A right is not an obligation. Right? So the right to vengeance, that is not an obligation. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it clear that the higher path of the path of great virtue, the path of high resolve, is to forgive and have patience. Right? And the thing about forgiveness and patience is that and from a psychological point of view, part of forgiveness and patience is also to be able to get past. Is also to be able to get past what has happened. So somebody has caused harm to you. Part of forgiving that person is also to be able to emotionally and psychologically move past the incident. Move past the incident. So you forgive and you move on, right? The same is true when you seek forgiveness, when you make tawbah. When you make tawbah and you feel the guilt, right? And out of the guilt you repent sincerely to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you promise not to do it again. There too it is important to then move on. Is to then move on and move past the sin. Because the problem with guilt is that it becomes inhibiting. Guilt becomes inhibiting for a person, and it becomes an obstacle to a person being able to overcome sin and remain steadfast and good. Because guilt is ongoing guilt, and not being able to overcome the emotion of guilt or the emotional impact of guilt becomes a psychological weakness, because of which a person's resolve weakens. Okay, so it works both ways, both when forgiving as well as when seeking forgiveness and repenting as well. Okay, carrying on. وراعي همك واشتغل بإصلاح نفسك عن عيب غيرك فإنه كان يقال كفى بالمرء عيبا أن يستبين له من الناس ما يخفى عليه من نفسه أو يمقت الناس فيما يأتي مثله أو يؤذي جليسه أو يقول في الناس ما لا يعنيه. Very beautiful lines, mashallah. And always consider or always be mindful of your intention or your resolve or what you intend to do, uh, uh, or your motivation. Always be mindful of your motivation. And then he says, وَاشْتَغِلْ بِإِصْلَاحِ نَفْسِكَ عَنْ عَيْبِ غَيْرِكَ. Be preoccupied with the rectification of yourself, so that you are not preoccupied with others. Right? Let your preoccupation, or better translation is, let your preoccupation with the rectification of yourself, right, keep you heedless of other people and their faults. So a person is so preoccupied with their own faults and how they can rectify their own faults that they don't notice other people's faults. That's basically what that means. It used to be said, this is Hasbi saying, it used to be said that it is a sufficient flaw in a person. It's enough as a aib, as a flaw in a person, that other people's flaws become clear to them, right? That in simple colloquial, that other people's faults catch their eye, right? But those same faults, but those same flaws remain hidden when it comes to themselves. So the very flaw, the very mistake, the very fault that I have in myself, I very easily notice that same mistake in other people, right? But it remains hidden. The fact that I have the same fault remains hidden in myself. So he says that is, if that's a bad enough fault in and of itself. Okay, this is very, very common. This is very, very common. People often see in other people their own faults. It's almost like looking in the mirror. Okay, now that can be okay if you also acknowledge that same fault in yourself, but it's terrible if one is preoccupied with the faults of others but doesn't see the same fault, the same thing in themselves. Okay, this is why it isn't here, but I'll bring it up. It's not a good idea to talk about yourself to other people. Right? So once you talk about yourself, you can tell stories about your life, no problem. Right? That's not an issue. I'm talking about, alhamdulillah, I always tell the truth. I'm an honest person. Alhamdulillah, Allah's given me a tawfiq. I can't remember when was the last time I lied. Yeah? People should be honest. Alhamdulillah, I'm an honest person. Yeah? Or, alhamdulillah, people are so, people, I don't know why people don't keep time and always, I'm never late. I'm always punctual. I'm always on time. Right? Or, I don't know, I don't get it. Like, why do people backbite and behave in this way? Yeah? So and so, always backbite. Alhamdulillah, I never backbite. Ultimate contradiction. While backbiting, right? While backbiting somebody else, one claims that they don't backbite. Okay? So this is tazkiyatun nafs. فَلَا تُزَكُّوا أَنفُسَكُمْ هُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِمَنِ اتَّقَى. Allah says, don't declare your own purity, because Allah knows who's pure. Allah knows who's pious. Allah knows everybody's piety. So when a person is preoccupied with their own goodness, right? There you go. It begins from there, right? That often blinds them from their faults, and when they're blinded from their own faults and preoccupied with their own so-called their own ideas about their own goodness, right? They're often other people's faults are amplified in their eyes, and they always pick them up, and they always notice them, and they're always criticizing. Okay, criticism, Allah forbid it, and Allah protect us. But sometimes overly criticizing other people is a form of belittling them. And belittlement is the definition of arrogance, right? And arrogance is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not tolerate. It says that a person who, and Allah protects us, a person who has even an iota of arrogance in them will not enter paradise. لا يدخل الجنة من كان في قلبه مثقال خردل من كبر. And there's a hadith Qudsi in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, العظمة ردائي الكبرياء ردائي والعظمة إزاري فمن نازعني فيه ما شققته. Knowing my own greatness is my way of translating it. Knowing my own great kibriya, right? Knowing my own magnificence, being aware of my own magnificence, and being aware of my own greatness. These are my upper and lower garments, meaning these are a part, these are attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is great and He knows it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is magnificent and He knows it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is glorious and He knows it. And He also knows that no one is like Him. Allah knows that He is the strongest and everybody is weak. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that He is great and nobody else is as great as He is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that He is magnificent and nobody else is magnificent, right? Compared to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these, at the attribute of knowing one is great and knowing everyone else is below you is divine. It is unique to Allah. It is unique to Allah. So Allah says, this is unique to me. Anyone who competes with me on these attributes, I will tear them to pieces. I'll tear them to pieces. And this is why arrogant people, eventually they get their comeuppance in a nasty way. Right? In a nasty way. And arrogance isn't in dressing well or driving a nice car or living in a nice house and so on. Arrogance is not in the blessings of Allah. Arrogance is not in the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Arrogance is in belittling other people and allowing one's own sense of self-worth, one's own kind of idea of one's greatness to not accept the truth when the truth is in front of you. So somebody who you consider below yourself tells you a truth and you say, get lost. Who are you? Who are you? So the Prophet ﷺ says, Al-kibru batrul haqqi wa khamsun nas. In the same hadith, when the Prophet ﷺ said that a person who has arrogance, even a mustard seed of arrogance in him will not enter paradise, right? A man asked the Prophet ﷺ, Messenger of Allah, a person, likes to wear nice shoes and nice clothes, right? Is that arrogance? And the Prophet ﷺ said, no, that is not arrogance. Arrogance is to belittle others and to deny the truth. Al-kibru batrul haqqi wa khamsun nas. So finding weaknesses, obsessing about weaknesses in other people betrays a deeper malady, a deeper disease. And that deeper disease is one of arrogance, right? That deeper disease is one of belittling other people. And these are extremely dangerous maladies that we all have to constantly kind of check in, constantly try to, you have to kind of, these are so bad, meaning some of these sins are so bad, like the way the ulama have gone out of the way to express different layers of sabr so that we can always have the reward. We can always make the intention to get the reward of sabr, right? Yeah, similarly, arrogance is so bad that people have to break it down in as many different ways as possible to try to avoid all of the different aspects of it. So the way the Prophet ﷺ says belittling another person is arrogance, right? Al-kibru batrul haqqi, al-kibru batrul wa khamsun nas. Khamsun nas is belittling others. So the ulama, in order to kind of create to compensate the other way, to give us something to hold on to that takes us nowhere near arrogance, they say, I've read this attributed to Ali radiallahu anhu, and I can't be absolutely certain, but it's true that a person's success lies in leaving home in the morning and thinking that every person that they meet is better than them. You meet a person, you think of them as that this person is better than me, right? Even if that person is a sinner. Even if that person is a sinner, because you don't know what their maqam is before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, رُبَّ أَشْعَثَ أَخْبَرَ ذي تمرين لو أقسم على الله لأبره. Right? مدفوع بالأبواب. That there's many a disheveled, dusty person. مدفوع بالأبواب. Right? Repelled at people's doors, pushed away from people's doors. Right? They go up to their door and they look like a homeless person. They look like a beggar. So people say, get away, and they push them away from their doors. In some narrations, all they possess is two pieces of cloth. Right? But their position, their maqam before Allah is such that لو أقسم على الله لأبره. If they were to swear an oath by Allah, Allah will fulfill the oath. But they say, I swear this, Allah will make that happen. Right? That is how powerful the relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when you see them, you think, oh, get away. You want to keep them away from you. You don't want to associate with them because they don't look like they're very well kept and and so on. But what is the natural reaction when we see people like that? To belittle them. Right? You think, oh, what's wrong with this guy? Why doesn't he take care of himself? He looks young. What's his issue? What's wrong with him? You kind of look down. Right? But there are two things that people don't know. Number one, you don't know their problem. You don't know their problem. You don't know what difficulty they're facing. The second thing you don't know is their maqam before Allah. Is their position before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? It doesn't even if they smell, they look like they haven't bathed and showered in months. Right? Whatever the case may be, even if they might and as such they might look like, oh, a Muslim is supposed to be clean, etc., etc. But you don't know though. There might be something about them. There might be something mentally wrong with them, but they still have. But that part of them that is still conscious worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all the time. Remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all the time. Trusts in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Never loses faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whereas another person might have committed suicide and jumped off a bridge, this person remains faithful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remains steadfast, remains trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And for that reason is deserving of Allah's love. Does that make sense? Yeah? So there are many examples of this. Sometimes you see people who act mad, but they may be sufferers of mental health, and people belittle them for that reason. But yet actually they have a maqam before. They have a great maqam before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some people are poor and and we might think of them as, I don't want them near my children. I don't want them near my house and so on. Okay, you might push somebody away because of a safety reason, but it should never, ever, ever be out of belittlement. And we must clearly distinguish between the two. Right? So if there's a homeless person, kind of on the street outside the college, you never ever turn them away because they're homeless. But you might turn them away because you think there's a safety concern. It's very difficult to make that distinction. And I've often found myself having to pause, right, and think. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, there was a man inside the garage, right, through the sisters' entrance. And I was about to say, kind of lose my temper and say, what are you doing here? And this, we have women going through this entrance and so on and so forth. But I was like, just before I did that, I thought, actually, let me ask the guy. So I asked him, he seemed a little bit like he'd been through things and so on. I said, I have a family, but I'm away from them. I'm just getting away from the cold and trying to have something to eat, and etc. Turned out he's homeless, right? And he just wants to get away and just find a little quiet corner, kind of speaks well and so on. So eventually I gave him some money, and then I said, look, you're in an entrance. You're going to have to move, right? So just give yourself 5 minutes, take a break, and then leave. So it's all there, isn't it, in the intention, in how you process your thoughts, right? So concern for safety, yes, and concern for the well-being of the person can go together. You can actually ask a person to stay away and or leave or not let them in, right? But not look down upon them as a person, not look down upon them as a person, and be unhelpful or not help them. You could perhaps help someone, but also not open the door to them out of safety concerns. Meaning, how we process things in our mind, right, is critical. Last example is a sinful person. So a person may appear sinful to you and me, right? And we might look down upon them before that. And we might think that I don't commit that sin. But they may have other good deeds because of which they are much closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than we are. So even another person's sin does not justify thinking less of them, thinking that you are better than them. So there is a difference between acknowledging that this person is committing a sin and that is bad. That not belittling them doesn't make their sin good. The sin is still bad, but that does not mean you are better. Right? I've seen somebody commit a sin. They've committed a sin and they are sinful, and that is a sin in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is a bad thing. But that does not mean that they are worse than me and I am better than them in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because I have only seen a tiny piece of the picture of their life. Right? The rest of their life is unknown to me. And therefore, if you want to combat arrogance, one way to do it is to think of all people that we meet, to think of them as better than us. Right? And this is an internal thought process. Again, don't talk about it. Right? So now, when I see somebody, I always think of themselves as better than me. I'm a sinful person. Why would I think that somebody else, that somebody else is worse than me? I'm sinful. No, this is nonsense. Okay? The more you keep it inside, right, the safer it is. Have the thought process, discuss the thought process. Don't make it, right? We don't make it about ourselves. There's too much of that. People are completely, I don't know, we just see, I often see that we seem to have lost the ability to just rein in, just like self-promotion and talking about ourselves, particularly when it's for no reason. Like, yeah, you go into a job interview, you talk about yourself like a whole bunch, get the job, but don't lie. Yeah, but just when sitting and talking, I'm this and I'm that and I don't do this and I don't do that. Seriously, it's dangerous. Okay, so I'm trying to remember where I was. Yeah, so it is sufficient. So it is sufficient. It is sufficient as a fault in a person that other people's faults catch their attention and catch their eye, or the faults in other people's the faults that's hidden to them, their own faults that are hidden to them, right? They notice in other people. Okay. أو يمقت الناس فيما يأتي مثله, or they hate in other people things that they themselves do. Right? Astaghfirullah, look at these people, look at what they're doing, this is so bad, etc., etc. But in their private life, they do it themselves. In their private life, they do it themselves. So what are they doing? If you do something privately, but then you criticize other people for doing the same thing, what's going on here? It's a show of piety. They might not be a hypocrite. They might truly believe it's sinful. They might truly believe it's sinful, and they may even regret doing it themselves privately. Okay, so therefore it may not be hypocrisy. Yeah, but it's a show of piety. Unless it's amr bil ma'ruf nahy anil munkar. Unless it's amr bil ma'ruf nahy anil munkar, meaning they are enjoining good and forbidding evil. Right? So there's a difference between criticizing evil and forbidding it. Does that make sense? So forbidding evil is trying to stop it. When I say forbidding it, I don't mean like trying to be boss man. I command thee to stop. That's not what I mean. Stopping evil. All right? Nahy anil munkar. Now, obviously, the hadith tells us, "Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadihi, fa in lam yastati' bilisanihi, fa in lam yastati' biqalbihi, wa dhalika ad'afu al-iman." Any one of you that sees an evil, he should try to stop it with his hand, and if he cannot, if he's unable, then he should stop it with his tongue, and if he's unable, then he should hate it inside his heart, for that is the weakest state of iman. And therefore, if a person tries to stop a sin that they themselves might commit in private, that is not necessarily a bad thing, but rather an acknowledgement of the fact that it is a sin, right? Which they might privately be doing, but it shouldn't. But again, remember, you separate the two. The two things have to be separated: the act of forbidding, stopping the sin, right, and the act of belittling the person who's committing the sin. Those two things have to be separated. You can stop somebody from committing a sin, but not think of them as right. But perhaps cry a tear as you walk away, knowing that I've got this addiction myself. I've got this problem myself. As evidence, because sometimes when it comes to sins, because my last example was of a sinful person, I'm not thinking of not and acknowledging that even a sinful person can be more virtuous than you, right? As evidence, we can present the hadith of the Sahabi who was a drunkard, right? Sahabi who was a drunkard. He used to even come to the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a drunken state. Yeah. And so one person criticized him and cursed him. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Don't curse him, for he loves Allah and His Messenger." Right? Meaning that despite the fact that he committed one of the greatest of sins, a kabira min al kabair, right? One of the major sins. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam acknowledged his goodness, acknowledged his love of Allah and His Messenger, and did not allow another person to belittle him and curse him or judge him, because essentially when the other person was trying to curse him, he was judging him as evil. He was judging him as evil, or he was judging him as deserving of a curse. When the Prophet says, "Well, he loves Allah and His Messenger." A couple came and it's a long story, but in short, came and they admitted to zina. Right? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as we are supposed to do when somebody comes and admits to a private sin. When someone admits to a private sin, you ignore them and you say, "No, don't want to know." Right? Particularly if the sin carries. So in the case of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when somebody comes and admits a sin to him that carries a punishment, it puts the Prophet ﷺ in a very difficult situation. Because on the one hand, he is obligated to carry out the punishment as the ruler, but on the other hand, he doesn't want to punish this person. He doesn't want this person's sin to be exposed, and he doesn't want that person to be punished. So when they came to him and they said, "Messenger of Allah committed zina," the Prophet ﷺ turned away, as if to say, "No, get away from me. Why are you coming and telling me this?" Even though, of course, they've done it. And the man turns around and comes back and faces the Messenger of Allah and tells him again. And then the Prophet turns away again and comes down and faces him again and admits to it again. And the Messenger of Allah then says, "No, maybe you just touched. Maybe you just touched." The Messenger of Allah gives him every excuse. And the man basically, he wants his sin expiated. And so in the end, when there's absolutely no ambiguity and every single excuse the guy has kind of, so in the end, so this person's committed a major sin, committed zina, and in the end, the punishment is carried out upon them. The Messenger of Allah prays their janazah, and somebody asks him, "How come you're praying janazah of somebody who committed such a bad sin?" And the Messenger of Allah says, "Their tawbah was so profound that if it was spread out, right, and it was distributed to all of the people of Medina, it would be sufficient to have all of them forgiven." Right? Meaning, and no matter how bad, an act of sin is not a judgment against the person. The judgment against the person is not even about the aggregate of their deeds. Remember this. It's not even about the aggregate of their deeds. Mostly this person, it must be a good person because mostly they did good. It's not, this is, your accounting and my accounting doesn't matter. It absolutely does not matter, right? Because people are not judged according to their hisab. They're judged according to the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah judges with mercy. He judges with justice. He just judges with mercy, right? And perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's anger might come into it as well. But the point is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares in the rahmati sadaqat ghadabi, that my rahmah precedes my wrath. My rahmah precedes my wrath. It is Allah's rahmah that judges. It is Allah's rahmah that takes people to paradise. And we have no way of. It may be that a person's perception of their own sinfulness while they commit sin is what brings upon them the mercy of Allah. And so they are forgiven. And it may be that a pious person constantly preoccupying himself or herself with the sins of others is the reason why they get punished. Right? So, anyway. So this is an extremely important aspect, which really is a fundamental part of the beauty of an Islamic society. Right? And if I asked you, do you think that these qualities are manifested now in Muslim societies? What would you say? What would you say? So, what we've just spoken about today these are things of profound beauty, of profound, deep spiritual meaning. Okay, and things that, like, you have to kind of go against instincts, right? One's own instincts to kind of resist. You know, you're sitting. This is so hard sometimes. You're sitting with others, and backbiting begins. Right? Backbiting begins. So then one person points out, "Bro, come on, like, it's backbiting. Leave it. That's not backbiting." So then a ta'wil is presented, like an interpretation is presented of what's going on in order to justify backbiting. So pleasurable is backbiting that the person will say, "Oh no, it's not backbiting." You know, I'd say it to his face. So the ta'wil is present. I don't like. No, astaghfirullah, it's not backbiting. I say it to his face. So you say, that doesn't make a difference. It's still backbiting. Oh, come on, man! I really need to say this. You know, it's you need to know this. Like, we need to know this about this person, right? Because, you know, it's bad. Like, bro, I don't want to know. And sometimes it's impossible to back. It's so prevalent and it's so embedded, and like we take so much pleasure out of it that it takes being harsh and damaging relationships to stop a person from backbiting in front of you. That's how prevalent it is. Yeah, I'll tell you a story. We went. I love telling this story. Myself and Sheikh Hassan Ali. You guys know Sheikh Hassan Ali? Right, so he's obviously famous on social media nowadays. So myself and Sheikh Hassan, we were classmates in an institution out in just outside Nottingham, and we studied there until our final year, and we went to Bangladesh together to finish off our studies. And we did a hadith study. We went to Bangladesh. So Sheikh Hassan ended up with back problems because we both stayed at the institution, and the system was that you slept on the floor and then woke up in the morning, wrapped up your mosquito net, and then rolled up your bedding, and then sat on a solid concrete floor and slept, right, in the same room. So anyway, so the kind of the hard floor underneath, we were at two different places, so we were in the same institution, had given him back pain. So I used to, my teacher's teacher, Sheikh Al-Aziz's teacher was Sheikh Nuruddin Gopuri, really famous sheikh from a village called Godpur, really senior across the country, and so on, but very well known for his ruqyah, very well known for people benefiting a lot from him reciting du'as or blowing in water, and etc. So every Tuesday he had a surgery, and there used to be a queue like half a mile long, people coming to take treatment from him. So we once went to a program where he was speaking, and I kind of tagged along with Sheikh Al-Aziz, my teacher, and Sheikh Sheikh Hassan tagged along with us as well in the hope that he might be able to see Sheikh Nuruddin and tell him about his back pain. So after the program, Sheikh Nuruddin is in a masjid and people are coming to see him, saying salam, asking for dua, and saying, "Oh, Sheikh, I get lots of headaches," and so on. And he doesn't do much. Sometimes he slaps people. He slaps them on the head and he goes, "Oh, go, you'll be fine." But just before us, there was this guy, and he said, "Sheikh," in Bengali we say Huzur. We don't say Sheikh. So Huzur, all these other people, their treatment doesn't work. So many, all these other Maulanas and Sheikhs, their treatment doesn't work. Your treatment works. Oh my goodness. So Sheikh Nuruddin's a little man. He went, "Huh? Who told you to talk to me about other people?" So, so you know that the urge to continue to make riba. So the man said, "Oh no, Sheikh, no, I'm not talking about other people. I'm just saying their treatment doesn't work and yours does." And this is what I meant about, like, you have to do things that would upset other people that in order to stop it. He picked up his stick. He picked up his stick, right? And he went, "Why are you talking to me about other people for? Why are you talking to me about in front of other people?" And he went like that. And the man kind of backed off. And other people said, "You're doing riba in front of him. He doesn't want you criticizing other people. You're exposing him to sin. Move. Right? Get away from here." And the guy still, he didn't get it. He was like, he still didn't get it. He just went away bewildered. And I was a bit, I was thinking, oh, that was a bit extreme. And Sheikh Aziz told me, "You cannot take it. You cannot take it. It's like, why are you dumping your sin? Why are you, like, I'm innocent. I'm an innocent party. Why are you making me sinful with your leader?" Right? For him, it's an offense. It's like you might as well hit me. Right? You might as well harm me in some other way. Right? You're making leader in front of me. Anyway, to finish the story off, Sheikh Hassan went up to him and said, "Oh." So we're scared now, right? I just stayed away. Sheikh Hassan was up there and said, "Oh, Sheikh, I'm sleeping on the floor. I've got back pain." So really? Okay. They grabbed him by the arm, pulled him forward, right? And then leaned over like that and slapped him 3 times. So the thing about karamat of awliya, right? His back pain was gone the next day. So, but there you go. So anyway, he passed away. My first Hajj, I ended up in his tent as well in Arafat. So that was a great opportunity. Got the order. I have my Sahih Bukhari opening dars and ending dars and ijazah is also from him. But yeah, you get these interesting. But you don't see those kind of things. You don't see much of those kind of things nowadays. But that was fun. He was known for being a bit hot-headed, but it was interesting to see him lose his temper over not even direct riba, because the guy didn't actually take any names. But the fact that he's generally kind of criticizing other ulama, it was too much. How dare you? Anyway, so it shouldn't be tolerated. And you have to remember, when somebody backbites in front of you, they are making you commit sin. You are being forced to participate in sin. So therefore, it's one of the, I mentioned the hadith about stopping sin. This is an important one to stop. Okay? Sufyan ibn Hussein al-Wasiti, in Sheikh al-Fatah mentions this story, says that I mentioned, it's a bit like Sheikh Nuruddin's story, right? He says, I mentioned the fault of a man in front of Iyas ibn Muawiyah al-Muzani, who was the judge of Basra at his time. And he's a tabi'i, so met Sahaba. So he's a tabi'i and extremely intelligent. People used to like give examples of this and tell stories about his intelligence. So he looked at me and he said, Have you ever fought the Romans? I said, no. So what about the Sindhis? Fought the Sindhis? No. What about the Indians? You ever fought the Indians? You done jihad against the Indians? I said, no. So what about the Turks? You done jihad against the Turks? I said, no. He went, so the Romans, the Sindhis, the Indians, the Turks, all are safe, right, from you, but your brother Muslim is not safe. Because obviously they hurt him with his tongue. المسلم من سلم المسلمون من لسانه ويده. The Muslim is the one from whose hand and from whose tongue other Muslims are safe. So he said to him, like, you've not, the people who are our enemies at the time, perhaps we're in jihad against them, there's battles going on against them, right? You know, you've not harmed them, you've not done anything against them, but you just harmed your Muslim brother, right? So anyway, so we'll stop there, inshallah ta'ala. I think I'm way past time. Yeah. So we'll stop there, inshallah ta'ala. If you have questions, you can ask, stay and ask questions. If you must go, I've already gone past time, then inshallah you can go. But just last comment, in Surah I was going to say this before I told that story. In Surah Al-Hujurat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la yaskhar qawmun min qawm. O believers, let not one people mock another, because one may be better than the other. The one who's mocking, the one who's being mocked may be better than the one who's mocking. لا يسخر قوم من قوم عسى أن يكونوا خيرا منهم ولا نساء من نساء, and women shouldn't mock one another as well. عسى أن يكونوا خيرا منهم ولا تلمزوا أنفسكم ولا تنابزوا بالألقاب. Right? And don't hint towards each other's faults. Little kind of raising our eyebrow, stuff like that, right? These kind of hints and are kind of subtly pointing towards somebody. ولا تلمزوا أنفسكم ولا تنابزوا بالألقاب. Don't call each other names. بئس الاسم الفسوق بعد الإيمان. After a person becomes a believer, being referred to with a nickname that hints at sin, right, is really bad. بئس الاسم الفسوق بعد الإيمان. ومن لم يتب فأولئك هم الظالمون. And then يا أيها الذين آمنوا اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن. O believers, refrain from much suspicion. إن بعض الظن إثم. Right? Sometimes suspicion is sin. So this is to do with suspecting someone because of your safety, suspecting that they could be harmful, or suspecting without necessarily exposing, but in order to save yourself from their harm, save your wealth from harm, etc., is one type of suspicion. And undue suspicion, thinking ill of people, right, is a different kind of suspicion. Having the worst opinion of people all the time is a different kind of suspicion. So Allah says, many types of suspicion are sin. And then, so إِنَّ بَعْضَ الظَّنِّ إِثْمٌ وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا. Don't spy on one another. وَلَا يَغْتَبْ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا. And let none of you backbite the other. أَيُحِبُّ أَحَدُكُمْ أَنْ يَأْكُلَ لَحْمَ أَخِيهِ مَيْتًا. That would you like to chew or eat the flesh of your dead brother? That's the analogy for backbiting. Right? Now, all of these, I always say this, all of these are not just little sins, right? These are major sins. They all come under the category of saving others from harm, particularly saving the honor of other people from harm. And the consequence of these sins is discord in society. So fundamentally, society starts to fall apart when these types of sins are committed. Okay? And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq, inshallah, to have a heightened awareness of these types of sins. Okay? Ahlan wa sahlan. You can go, you can stay, you can ask questions, you can stretch your legs. Not that you couldn't stretch your legs before, but I'd like to stretch my legs. Any questions, inshallah? Who gave me this?
I've read it.
Go ahead.
Well, lots of questions, but let's start with one. I've heard people say that, so this is unrelated, but I heard people say that if one says and one believes that it's water that slakes one's thirst rather than Allah, that it's a minor form of shirk, or a relatively minor form of shirk. Is that a generally accepted definition, or is that? I mean, maybe it needs more.
Well, think of it like this, right?
More.
What does one believe?
Hmm.
Because the words don't mean the words are not the belief. The words are not the belief, right?
Yeah.
So we say, for example, we say the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam brought us guidance, right? Yeah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala attributes things to us in the Quran, attributes things to the prophets in the Quran, attributes things to angels in the Quran. But of course, He is Allah. Wallahu khalaqakum wa ma ta'malun. Wa ma tashaa'una illa an yasha Allah rabbul alamin. Allah created you and your actions. You don't even will things unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills it. Right? So, what people say does not necessarily represent what people believe, or doesn't always represent the reality of matters, but rather what people say just is a representation of what they perceive in the thought. So what they believe is what matters.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we'd have to find fault in the Quran.
Yeah.
Because things are attributed falsely.
And as you say, people speak in they simplify things to clear that and just to get it across.
Speech is often based on bawah anyway.
Yeah.
It's based on perceived reality rather than spiritual or active or deeper realities.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the water quench my thirst can be said, but what you believe in is what caused you to say Alhamdulillah after it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anything else? Go on.
Why is backbiting likened to chewing the flesh of one's dead brother? Why?
Well, a simple answer, without trying to kind of unpick the analogy too much. The simple answer is to create disgust in us. Meaning, chewing your dead brother's flesh is, and that's exactly how you're supposed to feel about that fight. And that's the basic explanation. But the analogy also is interesting. Mufassirun have broken it down, right? And the idea is that essentially, so think of the analogy is somebody's honor is there. So if you've taken a piece of someone, right? If it was physical, you would have taken a piece of their flesh. But what you've done is taken a piece of their honor, taken a piece of their honor because you discussed them negatively around other people. Even if what you said was true, even if those people knew that truth, meaning you said something bad about someone, everyone knows that it's bad, and you've discussed them, you still undermine them because you've just brought their honor down a notch, right? Now, honor is metaphysical, isn't it? Honor is metaphysical. So the analogy is with the physical. Why dead brother? Why dead brother? Why is the analogy with a dead person?
You can't do anything about it.
Yeah, because it's not there. Not there, it's in his absence. So belittling someone as in thinking less of them or thinking of oneself as better than them depends. You can belittle somebody without words. And you can belittle someone to their face. So belittling doesn't necessitate doing it behind their back. Right? ذكرك أخاك بما يكره is ghiba. The hadith defines ghiba as you mentioning your brother or remembering your brother in a manner that he would dislike. Right? So you say something about somebody that they wouldn't like to hear about themselves, even if it is the truth. Right? So in fact, when the Prophet ﷺ said, ghiba is dhikruka akhaka bima yakrah, the Sahabi asked, what if what I said is true? What if the fault I mentioned is in him? Right? So the Prophet ﷺ said, well, if what you say is in him is true, and he has that fault, then it's ghiba. If it's not true, then it's slander. Another major sin, right? And belittling a person, you can do to their face. You can do without saying anything, right? You can give the impression that I'm better than you and you're worse than me, or something along those lines, right? So this is the thing about belittling. And the Prophet, what's really strange is that the Prophet ﷺ is effective. He pretty much says belittling others is arrogance. That's it. Um, and belittlement, there's a pious belittlement. So there is a pious arrogance. Ustad Sadiq actually did a talk on this in one of our Jum'ah for us, where people find deen and become pious, and then on the basis of piety and deen, they belittle. Belittle other people. So I'm better than them because I pray. Right? So my action, a person who prays, their action is better than the person who does not pray. But they are not. They do not know if they are better. You don't know. Your action is better, but you don't know if you are better. Right? What you are and what you aren't is entirely, true according to how Allah Subhanahu wa Taala views you, and you don't know. You don't know how Allah Subhanahu wa Taala sees you. Okay?
You know that let's say someone did you wrong and that would say that you went out or something and you come home and you discuss it with your family or discuss it with something and it felt really bad and you got
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. So if you're trying to manage harm, if your intention is to manage harm, get for example, speak to somebody so that you can receive comfort because you're struggling to cope with something. And you can tell them, but not necessarily take somebody's name. Say somebody has done this to me. Number one. If But however, if you need to take the person's name because knowing who that person is would protect, it is to do with protecting you or protecting others, right, from what they're doing. Then you can go ahead and speak about it. Okay. So I don't know, a bully, somebody who is physically attacking, molesting, or something like that. You understand? Or somebody you think somebody followed you and did something, etc., and so on, right? And you feel vulnerable. You feel that perhaps if somebody went and spoke to them, they won't do it anymore, and so on. Then you need to identify them to let people know. Another instance where riba is permissible is if somebody asks you for a reference, right, marriage or something like that. You're required to tell the truth. Right? You can't cause somebody else's harm because you think, oh, it's going to be riba if I tell them that this person is I don't know, like is an adulterer or something, or I don't know, or has a particular fault or something like that. Right? You tell the truth because now you need to protect this person from that particular harm or from the sin of this other person. And also when hadith narrators are criticized and spoken of negatively, that too is exempt from the definition of riba because it is for the sake of preserving the authenticity of our tradition, of our deen, the narration of the process. So hadith transmitters are recorded in books of um, rijal, as we know them, as liars. Right. So somebody's name is mentioned, and they'll say so and so scholar said that this person is a fabricator of hadith. So and so said he is a liar, he hardly tells the truth. Uh, he's a prolific kind of repetitive liar, etc., etc. Kind of negative statements about that person, and therefore they're being discussed in their absence negatively, and so on. But over here, it's being done to protect against the harm that will be caused by thinking of their narrations and their words to be truthful, to protect the Prophet ﷺ, a hadith from falsehood. And therefore, there it is. It's permissible. In fact, it's an act of, you get reward for it. So all of those people who did that and recorded those statements and recorded those judgments about these people, were rewarded for it. It was a noble deed.
Do they normally record the actual reasons why they say that?
Yes, usually it will be. Usually it's because, and usually it's somebody of authority that's saying it, by the way. So it'll be like Imam Ahmad. Imam Ahmad saying this person is a fabricator, or Yahya ibn Ma'in saying this person's a fabricator, or some people of that standing, or people that they knew saying that this is.
I mean, the only reason I ask is because, for posterity's sake, we'd like to preserve the reasons so that they understand.
So sometimes it's there, sometimes the reason is there, and sometimes it's just a judgment from another authentic narrator. So the way it works is that if a trustworthy narrator is saying somebody else is a liar, we'll accept the trustworthy narrator, right? And sometimes there's a story, and that the story will be told. Sometimes the reason is known. Sometimes it's simply because, and usually the concern isn't around. Sometimes it's to do with just them lying, but usually the context is lying about hadith. Meaning that they're known to, because fabrication became a problem, that they were known to fabricate and make up stuff and attribute it to the Prophet, and therefore they were being warned. Yes.
I have a question to do with forgiveness. Basically, say if someone is belittling you and talking down on you, and obviously cursing you as well, you really want to say something to them, or you really feel like doing something to them, but you don't do anything, you don't say anything, but you still feel it, and you don't forget about it. Is that a form of forgiveness? If you don't do anything,
Well, then you haven't forgiven them, have you?
so there's no form of forgiveness. If you don't do anything,
Forgiveness is.
you have to forget.
Well, the best forgiveness or the easiest forgiveness is when somebody else has asked for forgiveness, right? And therefore, when you are so that's why there are different words, right? There's afu, there's tajawuz, right? Now, afu is there's in different levels, and sometimes if a person hasn't sought forgiveness from you, then you're kind of not really forgiving necessarily, but you're overlooking. Okay? Now, it's a good idea here to try to be a bit selfish. You can be selfish about this. Your selfishness is in dealing with the matter in a way that is best for your own well-being. Dealing with the matter in a way that is best for your own well-being. So those feelings of hatred and those feelings of malice, perhaps, and those vengeful feelings and etc., are not good for you. Right? They're not good for you. They are also spiritual maladies that really one should try to cleanse. So forgiveness and being able to overlook and forbear and things like that requires practice. You have to get into the habit of kind of ignoring things and not thinking about them, and forgive and not taking offense so much that it starts to affect your equilibrium. And if you're logical about it, then you ask yourself that the feeling of anger you have now, does it feel good? If it doesn't, then perhaps it's a good idea to kind of practice overcoming it and forgetting about it. Not easy. This is why there is so much praise for people who control their anger. There is so much praise for people who are able to forgive others. So what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises, وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has special praise reserved for people who not control but who swallow their anger. That they feel it coming to the surface in the back. So, right? وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ. They suppress their anger and they forgive people. You have to go through this, perhaps this process of just holding your tongue, perhaps sitting down, lying down, going away, leaving, going for a walk, washing your face, or something like that. Whatever it is that you do to calm yourself down. Once you've calmed down, you'll find that it's easy to then think, okay. And then once you've walked away from it, forgiveness also becomes easy. So you have to find your own kind of mechanism. The recommended ones are sit down, lie down, etc., etc. But you've got to find your own mechanism that removes you from that situation. If somebody doesn't let you remove yourself from that situation, then once things have calmed down, have a conversation with them and tell them that, look, this is how I manage my anger. You have to let me remove myself from the situation for a little while so that things don't escalate. So, and how you manage it is different to how somebody else manages it. if it's in a relationship context, then it's a good idea to talk through each other's coping mechanisms, so you know what to do when the other person becomes angry. And if it's just random, you know, then it's kind of easier to get over. And although vengeance is a person's right, it's not healthy to be vengeful. It's not healthy to always want to lash back. That's really, really unhealthy. Yeah, and you'll feel much better about yourself, and you feel a lot healthier mentally if you practice just ignoring
You
things.
know,
Sorry. Go on.
for example, if you backbite you and you feel guilty about something, or you shouldn't have said something, what can you do to like compensate?
So don't. So if it's something that you think, if your understanding of the other person is such that if you just said to them, you know, I said something about you, I don't think you'd like it. I said it in your face, I backbite it, so which would be different. But if you think your relationship with the other person is such that you have an understanding of the good person, they will just forgive you without letting it get to them or without them, what did you say, or something like that, right? Then fair enough, do that. Just ask them for forgiveness. If telling them that you backbited them is going to make things worse, then don't. Make dua for them or do a good deed on their behalf. Right? And give some sadaqah in their name. Something like that.
What about backbiting and counselling sessions? I mean, there's official counselling and there's unofficial counselling where you seek counsel for.
Yeah, so that would fall under the first category of minimizing or mitigating harm. Yeah? Particularly in the professional context, no doubt about it. It would come under mitigating harm, and therefore it's within a confidential setting and so on, and it's to help a person emotionally kind of overcome what they've been through or the harm that somebody's done to them, etc. Yeah, it's fine. Go on.
What are the physical signs to know that it's forgiven? Like, I know you talk about being
Well, you don't want you forgiven. Forgiveness is when you no longer hold the harm that they did to you against them. Right? You don't want them to be accountable on the day of judgment because you want some sort of recompense on the day of judgment. Right? I mean, it's great if you forgiving somebody can mean you forget, right? But it doesn't have to mean you forget. And forgiveness definitely doesn't mean that you become gullible to, like you allow yourself to fall prey to them again. Does that make sense? So you can forgive a person but also be wary. You can forgive a person and avoid them just because you know that they have that, because it's their habit, because they have a habit, etc., etc. Provided that avoidance is because they have a habit and that avoidance isn't because you hate the person. Does that make sense? So hatred, well, that was a prohibition of, Prophet prohibited hating other hating people. So I think we hate the sin. So hating for the sake of Allah, right, is a sign of Iman. But hating for the sake of Allah, by the very fact that it's for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, means hating the sin and not the person. And therefore, avoidance of another person because of the sin must have something to do with how the sin affects you, how the sin affects your children, how the sin affects your family, how the sin affects your environment negatively, right? If it affects your environment negatively, avoid it. That makes sense. If it doesn't, then perhaps avoiding them means you haven't forgiven. Do you know what I mean? So the more you can get past the feeling of hurt, etc., the better it is for you ultimately, both in the dunya and in the akhirah. But that does not mean you're expected to be naive. That does not mean you're expected to expose. It's not like a Christian, like you get these Christian, idealistic Christian narratives of forgiveness. that oh, everything's hunky dory. Everything doesn't have to be hunky dory. You need to be rational about it, right? So your feeling of hurt and pain, etc. You can, you should work to overcome that. But at the same time, if you know that the other person has a habit of committing the same mistake again or doing the same harm to you again, then you should avoid them. Right.
How do you overcome how do you
You again, it's difficult, right? Some things are harder than others, and some things take time. Some things take time, right? And sometimes you have to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you the tawfiq to forgive. Sometimes you have to keep telling yourself again and again and again that you have forgiven. Forgiveness, they say forgive and forget. Forgiveness doesn't have to involve forgetting. In fact, it probably should. Okay? Which is why sometimes it can be even harder. Does that make sense? But what you're basically saying is, in a sense, forgiveness, in a way, in a funny way, forgiveness is a selfish act. Because it's about healing yourself. And it's very, very difficult to heal yourself if there's this thing inside you that you're just holding on to and not letting go of. It can be really difficult. And emotionally and psychologically, it can bring up things, right? So it's a process. And some people, like, they have no way of engaging that process by themselves. So they have to speak to somebody else. Right? And they kind of have to rationalize that forgiveness and why and how they should forgive, and to the extent to which they need to get past it, etc. They sometimes have to bounce it off another person in order to finally feel as though it's almost as if they're forgiving another person is a as they talk it out, the forgiveness is, whatever they've got inside or pent up inside is slowly leaving them. So different things work for different people, but it begins with the intention to forgive. It begins with the resolve to forgive. That I am going to forgive this person. I am forgiving that person. Once you've made that resolve and made that decision, then it's all about emptying out all the symptoms of the hate, the symptoms of the malice, the symptoms of the hurt, kind of overcoming that. And that takes time, it takes repetition, it takes talking, right? Things like that. You find a way to overcome it. But just remember that when you forgive somebody else, it's not really, when you hate them, you're not necessarily doing them any harm. When you forgive them, you're not necessarily doing them a favor, because they're not feeling anything, unless you tell them to forgive them, which would be great, because it will mend your relationship. So really, logically speaking, when you forgive someone, you get immense reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? وَلَمَنْ صَبَرَ وَغَفَرَ إِنَّ ذَلِكَ لَمِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. It's like the thing, the quality by which prophets are described. There was a Sahabi who used to, I can't remember exactly which narration it is. Either the Prophet ﷺ declared him a person of paradise before he entered, or the Prophet ﷺ said that when he went to Mi'raj, he heard his footsteps in Jannah. It's one of the two stories. If you know it, tell me. Sorry?
In Jannah.
In the Mi'raj, he heard his footsteps, and then when asked what his good deed was that he always went to bed without carrying any malice against anyone.
And then that's a different thing. So the Sayyidina Bilal, the footsteps.
Yes, that was wudu, right? Sayyidina Bilal's footsteps.
It's wudu every time. Yes.
So there's another companion, and his virtue, I think he was the person.
Then there was a story behind it, and the Prophet said, person, such and such is a person of Jannah, and then one of the companions went to stay with
Yes,
him.
that's it. So he was coming into the route, he was coming in, and the Prophet ﷺ declared him a person of Jannah before he came in. So then another Sahabi followed him and tried to see what his good deed was. couldn't find anything. Right? And eventually asked him. They said, well, I can't really think of much, but before I go to bed, I forgive her. I don't carry any malice against them. Even though that's wrong. I forgive. That was his deed. And what doesn't defend them. So we have to kind of remind ourselves of these things, of the great virtue of forgiveness. And then logically remember that in the end, we're the beneficiary. Forgiveness is something that we benefit from more than perhaps the person we're forgiving. And it's probably not a good idea. It's not really conducive to our own health and well-being to think when I've forgiven, I've done them a favor. Because that would imply that some of that malice is still there. You understand? You want it to be about you see what I mean? So let's bounce off with you on. So you then come down, I'll come back to you, Joe.
We spoke about arrogance being so bad that people have to break it down in order to avoid it.
Say that again?
We spoke about arrogance
Okay.
being so bad that people have to break it down in order to avoid it. What did you mean by break it down? And are there categories for arrogance?
So breaking it down, so kind of trying to understand, trying to think of arrogance and think of all of its manifestations, and try to deal with all of those manifestations because it's so serious, right? So the Prophet ﷺ mentioned two attributes, right? So he mentioned batul haq wa khamsun nas. So these are two attributes that you have to properly understand and then try to eradicate from within yourself. Right? That I will never deny the truth out of because I can't accept it from a person I see as inferior. Why? Because I'm not going to go around thinking of people as inferior. Right? And hence I'm going to save myself from arrogance in that way. That includes thinking of other people as lesser than us because we have more money, we have better status, have a better job, and all of that stuff. So being happy with one's blessings is not arrogance, but using one's blessings to look down upon someone else is arrogance, right? And obviously I spoke about the overcompensating, which is you kind of proactively in your mind and tell yourself. I mean, you do have to have those conversations with yourself, by the way. You actually have to kind of see a person and have something about them that you don't like or something that's a bit unpleasant or negative. And then you kind of have to say, what was that about? So like, what's your name? What's your name?
Rami.
Rami. I should bring it in. Don't take offense. I'm really bad at remembering names. So you got to kind of say, Rami, what you do? What was that about? Why did you think so negatively of the other person? Perhaps they have pious deeds that far exceed your own. Perhaps they are beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though what you just saw was unpleasant. Right? There may be another aspect of themselves that makes them beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because nobody's perfect. Right? And so sometimes you have to literally tell yourself, go through that process by actually feeling a bit mad and talking to yourself to ensure that you've overcome that moment and put it past you. You know? And trust me, it kind of feels good as well, actually, to do that. Because you've just earned a great reward, saved yourself from a great calamity, all the things that we're supposed to be happy about. Anything else? Go on.
How do you stop gossiping amongst women? You just talk to someone.
Just finished.
So I've answered it, but you want me to answer it in a gender specific way.
Women, you don't stop talking. You just go on and on. Okay.
Yeah. So if you think of gossip if we define gossip as talking about other people behind their backs, right? That is not necessarily riba. So talking about other people It's not good. So if you were to like nail things down, talking about other people isn't illegal. Talking about other people, remember, so speaking of other people in ways that would displease them is illegal. That's the first thing. So just the habit of, oh, do you know what Ramya did, or do you know what this person did, or do you know what that? Oh, you know, he did this, and today it's something like that, and it's something that is innocent. So that's not. So that's something that women do, but again, it's important to kind of make that distinction so that we're not. So that when we look upon something as a bad, and when we look upon a particular phenomenon as bad, we're clear with clarity about whether it truly is bad or not, right? So we think of something that women habitually do, and we automatically assume it's legal, but it might not be. We automatically assume that it's gossip, it might not be, right? So, like gossip in an Islamic sense is namima. That is when you pass information about people's faults around, right? So you want somebody to look bad, so you kind of you start a whispering campaign and so on. But perhaps if five women or five men, for that matter, sat together and spoke about their friends and spoke about how their day was, etc. Most of it wouldn't be riba necessarily, even though in a kind of loose colloquial sense, socially you might call it gossip. But it's just information, it's passing information. But not all of that information is something that the other person may not want to be shared, or not necessarily negative, or not necessarily something that they won't like. It's bad if you are exposing somebody's secret. Something that they didn't want you to tell anyone, right? They said to you, don't tell anyone, and you go and tell it. Then you've broken your word. So that's bad. Or you say something about them that they won't like. They wouldn't have liked you to have said. You remember them in a way that they would dislike, right? And that's bad. Somebody kind of takes pride in something, right? Or they're happy, they're well known for a word that another person might not like. Okay? They have a nickname and they take pride in it. They even refer to themselves with that nickname. Or other people refer to them with that nickname, and it's just become common. And they don't mind. That won't be legal. Even though it might be a negative word. So for example, there are people from the cellar who have become known by a physical disability. Everybody just remembers them. That it's like, oh, it's the man with the limp, it's the lame man. It's so on, right? So there are people who are known as al-A'raj. Al-A'raj is lame, but for him it's like, oh, they just describe him, and he becomes not. That becomes his laqab. That becomes his nickname. Okay, it's not an issue. Everybody refers to him as Al-A'raj. The Hadith books remember him as Al-A'raj, right? So if a person is like that about a particular word used to describe them, another person might not like it, right? Then it's fine to remember him in that way. So I was speaking the other day, yesterday. I was doing a talk with young people, not teenagers. And I was talking about how it's really hard in an age of distractions to be thoughtful about anything and to think anything through. You understand? So sometimes that's what's required. So we think things through so that sometimes you get so strict about certain things that even the halal becomes halal. And sometimes we become so lax about things that we start to make the haram halal. And we have to achieve some sort of balance, and that requires knowledge and clarity. Okay, inshallah.